I actually was going to go to this engagement at Lincoln Center today, but I decided not to because it is still raining and I don't want to be out there in the rain. I just feel more comfortable and cozy here at home today, so just going to stay home, probably do some chores around the house after this video. It's always mystical when the time of the month comes around, when I'm ovulating. I can feel it, yo. Like, it's like a surge in this sexual energy throughout my entire body that I feel. And when I feel it, when it comes, I check my calendar to confirm the date. And I'm like, okay, it makes sense. It's in alignment when I'm supposed to be ovulating. So it's like, oh my gosh. It's kind of torturous too because I am going through a period of celibacy. So I'm not engaging in any intercourse. Which it feels good. It feels refreshing. But at the same time, like, yeah, it's painful. It's like, why am I doing this to myself, right? But I hope the music playing too loud. I hope not. I hope not, because if it is, it's going to pick up on YouTube. But anyhow, it is too loud. It's too loud for me because it's distracting me. So let me turn it down. Like, I want to hear it, but barely. There we go. Even 1 is kind of too loud. It's at the volume 1. Alright. So it's like this internal struggle that I'm having. Like, should I break my celibacy or should I just maintain it? I think I'm going to maintain it. But it makes me reflect back on. I always have to take a deep breath when I reflect and I think about my BDSM spankings that I got. And I've gotten a good handful of them since I first stumbled across this whole lifestyle and dynamic of submission, dominance, and submission. So I wrote about it. I did a autobiographical erotica fictional story back in 2014, which I published on my website. I'm actually going to publish it in a book form sometime soon. Who knows? I know I keep putting it off. Same thing with my autobiography, with my life. I keep just procrastinating and saying I'm going to do it, but what is it going to take for me to actually just do it? Just set aside the time and just do it, Danielle. Maybe if I quit my job as a psychologist, I probably will just do it. I have this thing where I feel like things have to happen in a certain special time. Especially when it comes to releasing a book into the universe, right? Because once you release it, it's out of your hands. It's not in my hands when I release my book. So I'm calculated in terms of when that time is appropriate for me to release my story, American Dreamer, and my story, Dying to Submit. I had actually heard from this dominant man that I was engaged with when I moved back. I met actually when I moved back to New York. This very tall, domineering man. Like, he works in the hospital And that's the thing. These men are rare. I have to say this. So it's like when you encounter them, their energy is just so overpowering and so engulfing and hypnotizing. For me, okay, shall I say. That I'm just taken into a different world. But this man had to be like 6'5", and like we connected, and just perfect connection, right? You know, some people it's just like, okay, you just repulse that, you're turned off by, and you're like, nah, they're not my type. But then other people, and it's very rare. It's like a very small, select handful, like a special type, where it's just like you fit together like a glove. And it's just like a natural happening, right? It's just like all of your preconceived notions, all of your inhibitions, like everything that serves to keep up your guard, it just flutters away, flies away. When like you're in the presence of this entity, right? Because I think it's just a natural occurrence. It's just something that is supposed to happen. Cosmically speaking, in the universe, it's just, this is what this connection, and it feels so good, not just on a physical level, but on a spiritual level. It leaves you wanting more, craving more. It leaves you feeling in a place of satisfaction, of fulfillment, of getting exactly what you needed in that moment. And you're craving for more. Not like right away more, but like you have your eyes set, you have your mind set on the idea of, oh, I could have some more of this. Like, I want this to continue, right? So when I moved back to New York on April 1st, 2020, I was open-minded to many different possibilities. I mean, this is something I had always been looking forward to. Moving back to New York City. Like, I knew when I left New York in 2016 to pursue my PhD in clinical psychology that I wouldn't be staying in LA. I knew it was just temporary. I knew I would be coming back. So my moving back to New York, it was this moment that I had been waiting for every step of the way while in my program, right? Like the 4 years. Think about it, 4 long years in LA, away from a place that I call home now, New York. And imagining myself just coming back and reconnecting. So of course I was very open to many different possibilities. And those possibilities were aimed at connecting with other souls, masculine, dominant energy souls. And I actually did that. I came across this one guy, like I said, he's a very tall guy, worked in the hospital. And like I said, there are just some people that you just connect with, like no explanation needed. That's why when I have these interactions online, and we don't ever make it to the point of exchanging contact information, because I know like they're not for me, right? But when a person is for you in that moment, it's just like it happens so organically that it doesn't really require that many words being spoken. So going back to 2020, I remember writing in the form of a vlog my experience, which just seemed like a fantasy of being mesmerized, being touched, being held just the right way, being nurtured and disciplined by this male energy. And I reflect on that here in this video. I'm going to reflect on a few experiences here, and take it as you may. You can take it as Real life, you can take it as fiction. After all, I am a writer. I don't think people understand the gravity of BDSM spankings, right, and the purpose that they serve. And I talked about this before in terms of like what drew me to having this fetish or craving, desire to be beaten beyond the spanking, right? Because spanking to me is just like, just getting a nice slap here and there, right? That's a spanking, but a beating is on a whole nother level. And I'm pretty transparent about this. I just got done doing a video talking about my background in my childhood growing up. This is something I talk about periodically, not often, but it pops up as relevant. And I know where it comes from. Like, I know that I crave spankings, beatings, shall I say, in my adult relationships because it stems from being beaten as a child, being disciplined as a child. Not by my father, but by my mother. My dad never hit me. It was intentional for him to not hit me. That wasn't his thing. All he had to do was speak, and I listened. But my mother, on the other hand, she took to disciplining me through the use of humiliation and disempowerment. I felt so weak. I felt powerless in those moments. And she made me lie across the bed. Well, first, take off all my clothes, right? Then lie across the bed and be subject to her domination, right? And physically beating the shit out of my ass. And she didn't care where the weapon landed, right? So her weapons were a cable cord. I should have some props, right? So I can show you guys, but I don't. I do actually. Maybe I can grab one of the props. Let's see. See here. Let's see. Can I grab this? Can I grab this? Yeah, we can. Let's see. Do I have another? Alright. Let's see here. Is this? Oh, wow. Look at there. It's actually detached. I actually have two props here I'm going to show you guys. Alright, so it was actually 3 choice weapons that she would use. This is one. Not the actual, this item here, right? Not like this actually purchased, I think sometime here in New York maybe, or maybe in LA. But this is similar, right? This is what she would use. This is an extension cord, right? So she would use this. Pretty long. I don't know how long this is. It's like 10 feet maybe? 12 feet? And she would use this. And then the other thing she would use is this. So this is a cable cord, right? It's kind of dusty. It's a cable cord. Or what do you call it? AV cord, I guess. But we call it cable cord. That's how we connected cable back in the day. Like so. So these are 2 items that she would use. The third, I don't think I have a leather belt, but she had one. The other one was a leather belt, but it was more so this and then the extension cord that I showed you guys. And she would demand that I lie on the bed unclothed, only in my underwear. Like, we get to keep on our underwear. Everything else had to come off, right? Literally, only our panties were on. And be beaten. How long? I don't know. It felt like forever. I felt like I was out of breath at the end of the whole session. And then after it ended, it was just, it was no debriefing. It was no aftercare. It was just like, all right, learn your lesson kind of thing, right? And this happened like repeatedly. Even through the age of 16. So I'm not going to go too much in detail about that history. I just want to lay the foundation first. And then I'm going to talk about my experience with BDSM spankings as an adult. I'm just laying the foundation here. But these beatings happened from, how young can I remember? My earliest memory was 5, I think, through 16. And it was at age 16 that I decided, like, nah, enough is enough. Like, I'm too old for this shit, right? Like, too old to be taking off your clothes. At that age, I already had my menstrual cycle, right? I started menstruating at age 16. I had breasts, right? They weren't, like, the size that I have now, but, you know. Yeah, so to disrobe, you know, at that age, it's just like, it's too much. It's too much, right? Lie across the bed and get beaten. No, too much, right? And teenage years is the period where teenagers want to feel a sense of autonomy and independence and maybe able to make their own decisions and have their own mind and just have their own everything, right? Like, they step into adulthood, you know, typically like at the age of 16 or the teenage years. And so, yeah, I was in that age and I was just too smart for my own good, and I knew that I didn't have to tolerate that anymore. So I ran away from home, essentially. So that was that. Fast forward to 2014. So we're in 2022. That was 8 years ago. I'm 38. So I was like 30, age 30. Age 30 to age 31. That's when I first kind of stepped into this world of BDSM. Now, I've always had like this fantasy of being dominated, being like tied up and beaten since I was a little girl. Go figure, right? But I never acted on it necessarily. I never expressed it necessarily, like in my relationships. But yeah, I was in a relationship with my now best friend, who lives in a different state than I live, but we're like best friends. Talk a lot, like many hours on the phone. But I was dating him at the time, and our relationship pretty much had run its course, right? And we were like at the end. I think I was at the end, essentially. We had dated for 5 years. And our relationship was like void of intimacy. Sexual intimacy, shall I say. Like, we were intimate because that was my best friend. So, of course, like, we were like this. But we weren't sexually intimate, right? Because he was more asexual. I think maybe I had took his virginity, but we only had sex like once or twice, you know, and even that was not even memorable, right? So I was in a space of wanting more, right, and just wanting to feel loved in a dominant way, in a domineering way, in a possessive way. I wanted to feel loved in that way, similar to like how I was raised, right? And this is something that is not going to go away. I remember, fast forward, that was 2014, right? When I had this inkling to step into BDSM. Fast forward from that, I remember like out in LA, when I was working on my doctoral studies, like, of course, they require psych students to get counseling, right? To get therapy. And I had a psychoanalyst that I hired for my therapy sessions, and she was so diligent. God damn. She was so, like, her focus was trying to change me, right? I mean, as most therapists, right? They think they can change people. But actually, I said this before. I made a whole video on this. Like, she created this shift in my thinking, though. She did challenge my thinking as it relates to my submissive desires. Because I expressed this to her, right? How would she know unless I tell her? I was transparent with her, as I am with most people. Like, I am who I am, right? And I feel very comfortable to just be myself and express myself, right? This is where I feel most happy, most secure, and most free when I'm expressing myself. So, yeah, in therapy, I definitely opened up, and I expressed to her, like, yeah, I'm a submissive, and she was, like, expressing curiosity, like, what is that? What is that? I'm like, I identify myself as a baby girl. I like to be dominated by men. And I think her mind went the same direction that most men's mind go, right? They think sex. They think, oh, freak. She's a freak. Right? But no. Right? So I began to, like, uncover and to explain to her what I truly mean by that. Right? In the sense that it's more of a dynamic. It's more of an exchange of power that motivates me, that I thrive on in these interpersonal relationships, right? Like, I like to submit and I like to feel owned by a man. I like when a man tells me what to do, but in more of a caring way, right? It's not that, okay, I like to be mistreated and dogged out, because that's the other end of the spectrum. So I get it when people think of submission and they think of domination or a baby girl, right? They think of the total opposite of what it is for me, right? They think that I somehow desire to be mistreated, to be tossed around like a rag doll, to be called out my name, to be slapped around, and I have to make it clear. To the point where I got tired of explaining it, so I just, like, shut that part of me off. But I explained it to her. And I can never forget the things she said to me that created a shift, right, in my thinking. She said, oh, and it was a challenge. Yeah, she confronted me. And I felt that the confrontation was very quick, like quick in terms of our developmental relationship, right? Like, we're developing a relationship with each other, but it was quick, because I'm just like, damn, how many sessions are we in? We're not even probably fucking 4 sessions in, and she confronts me. She's like, oh, so you want a man who will take care of you in exchange, how did she put it? In exchange for you submitting to him, right? And I'm like, of course, my knee-jerk reaction, like, no, right? Because it's the response. My response is to say no to not what she said, but how she said it, right? Because, of course, how she said it, it's dumb, right? It was more judgment, It's confrontation. It wasn't gentle, the way she approached, the way she did it. She wasn't gentle at all, right? She was just hard-nosed, like, bam, right? And this is a white woman, and she's just like, looking at me, like, grilling me, like, you want a man to take care of you in exchange for your submission to him. So I pause and I'm like, no. But then I don't even think I had the words to argue against it. And on top of that, even if I did have the words to argue against it, it wouldn't have come out in a confident way, right? It's like psychologists, we know bullshit, right? We call it, you know what I'm saying? A good psychologist will anyway. She's a psychoanalyst. She's a psychologist. No holds barred, right? Like, in your face, just straight chaser. I mean, straight, no chaser, right? So I don't even think I even had the words, or even if I did, like I said, I don't even think I argued against it because I just like it cut, right? It cut me, and I kind of felt hurt in a sense, right? It was like a narcissistic injury, but at the same time, it triggered obviously me to think, and I'm like, I knew that what she said wasn't 100% true, right? That's not what it is, right? That was her interpretation, but that's not exactly what it is, right? What it is that, and the funny thing, this is how I felt in the moment. I was just like, damn, what it is that, is it that? It wasn't so much that, because I guess I wanted her to understand me. And I think sometimes people think, like, oh, you want a man to take care of you, because I've heard that before, like, as if I can't take care of myself. You're missing the point, right? If you assume that I need a man to take care of me in that way, I need a man to take care of me. No, I can take care of myself. And they go along the lines of, oh, you're a gold digger, right? You're trying to use a man. Like, no. Or you're trying to exchange this, right? As if that's an equal exchange. And that's the part that made me think, right? Because I'm thinking, like, the way she put it as in a way that my submission is worth far more, is far greater than a man taking care of me. I'm like, damn. So it didn't change me from being a submissive, right? She couldn't heal me, so to speak, and avert me away from BDSM, right? Or domination or bondage or spanking. She didn't change that. That's not going to change. But what she did do was gave me a greater appreciation for my submission, right? And increased the value. So the stock just went up, right? So I'm like, damn. In a sense that, no, it's a sacred gift. You just don't just give it to any guy. It's not that I was giving it to any guy, but it's just even to heighten my level of guardedness, right? And precaution. And doing so, because that can be pretty dangerous, right? And she was just addressing that part, right? The risque part of it, in the sense that, yes, it could lead down a path that I can really be fucked up. So at the time that I was doing therapy with her, I'm trying to recall. I think I had ended my relationship. My last relationship. Ironically enough. So my last relationship was with a guy who's from Brooklyn. He's Jamaican. It started in 2014 when I first moved to New York. So I kind of fell in love, when I first moved here. And it lasted through 2017. So, yeah. He followed me out to LA. And I think I have shared that story, that part of my life, but not in depth. Because a lot was happening, I don't think people get it. They don't get it. But a lot was happening where, yeah. I think I did, though. I think I have shared this where after I finished my master's, I actually got a master's from LIU on the island. On Long Island campus, and when I finished that, I had my mind made up, like even before, and I had told my ex this. I was like, yo, like I'm a person, you can't anchor me down, like I'm a free spirit, and who knows where I'm gonna be next, right? So I had told him that I had, a desire to like move to the UK, and I actually was looking into PhD programs out there. I was going to like the graduate school fair, the International Graduate School Fair hosted here in New York. And he came along with me. He was like, no, you can't go. And he was like, anywhere you go in the world, I'm going to find you, kind of thing, right? He was very possessive, but I liked it. Like, it was a balance, right? That's what I wanted. But yeah, it turned bad. Anything good can turn bad, and it will. And so yeah, that relationship got to the point where it was just, yeah, it was toxic. Yeah, it was just too much, and too much for our own survival, right? We just had, for our own survival, we had to part ways. But he didn't want me to leave, so I ended up kind of escaping, and I left New York abruptly. So we were living together, right, during this time. And I bounced. I booked a flight, and I abruptly moved to LA in 2016. And he didn't want me to go, obviously. He was like, oh, where are you? I'm like, listen, I'm on the plane. Plane about to take off, right? He was like, no, get off the plane. No, I'm not getting off the plane. I'm out of here. And he was like, all right, call me when you land. It's like, what the fuck? I just told you I'm out of here. Like, yo, I'm leaving. Like, we're done. It's like, call me when you land, right? That's that mind shit, right? That's that fucking mind fuck. And so I landed, of course. I landed in Burbank. I had no idea. And mind you now, this is how adventurous and how much that I'm so free-spirited. Like, I don't give a fuck. But I do give a fuck, but I don't. Right? And so it goes to show, I'm thinking about, like, you know, my position that I have now where I work. I've had a discussion about possibility of me leaving, and they're thinking I'm joking. I'm just like, y'all have no idea. Like, y'all have no idea. I'll pack all this shit up and be gone, okay? Just because I can. It's about doing what I can do, right? Just to prove a point, to show people. And so I did that, and I landed in Burbank. It was like late at night, middle of the night. I had no idea. I never had been to LA at all. When I moved to New York, I didn't come to New York beforehand to scope it out, to look for work. Like, I just spontaneously did it, you know. Same thing with LA. I just like, all right, I'm done with my master's. All right, I'm about to go to LA. Never been at all. I didn't know what the fuck, where the fuck. I landed at Burbank Airport. I traveled light, so I had my luggage, very small luggage, and I remember, because I know how to navigate, of course, like, girl ain't stupid, so of course I had my phone, and I found the closest bus station, which is right outside the airport. Like, go figure, usually there's, like, you know, bus connections near every airport. So I walked to the bus station, got on the bus, next bus coming. I'm just like, I didn't know what the fuck. I'm just like, where is this bus going? I asked the bus driver, and he was like, we're going to Hollywood. I'm just like, oh, all right. I said, well, I'm looking for a place to stay. Can you drop me off? And he recommended. It's just like, this is how the universe works. This is the person that I am. I move like that, right? And I know that I am protected. I'm always protected. That's just how I move. A lot of people would not do that, but I did, right? And that's kind of how my beginning started with me in LA. And so he was like, all right, I know a place. And he dropped me off in front of this hostel on Hollywood Boulevard. And then from there, like, I stayed in the hostel for a few weeks. Of course, I made contact with my ex-partner again. He wouldn't leave me alone. He was just like, answer the phone, I'm coming. And so he came, but then I ended up getting an apartment, securing an apartment in that neighborhood in Hollywood, in my name. The rest is history. But their relationship was very tumultuous, and it became very toxic. And I introduced him to BDSM. He had no idea what that 4-letter acronym word was, right? I introduced him to that and actually let him read my book. I let him read my book, American Dreamer, and I let him read Dying to Submit. He was enthralled by it. You know, he was thrilled. He was, like, really enticed, and he wanted to try it out. He tried it out, and it's like we did it. But it's a fine line, yo, when it comes to domination and abuse. And that's kind of what happened. Like I say, remind you, okay, this is a guy from New York, okay, and he's from Brooklyn, and he's Jamaican, okay. That should be enough said right there. Just given the cultural characteristics, of those attributes that I just named. And so I liked it though. Like I liked aspects of it until it got like it was too much. I'm just like, nah, dog. But some of the things that I did like was his openness to BDSM spankings, and this is when we were living in the Bronx. He gave me like, he gave me what I wanted essentially, right? And he actually would ask me, and this is how it was supposed to go in a healthy dynamic, right? He asked me like how hard I wanted it, right? As it was happening. And of course, I want you to go hard, yo. He actually went soft initially because he didn't want to hurt me. Ironically speaking, though. Though he hurt me many times throughout the relationship, emotionally and physically. But in that moment when it was more of an act, shall I say, or consensual act, he asked for permission to go harder. And I was like telling him to go harder. But then when he went harder, and mind you, I was unclothed completely, right? Like I was when I was a little girl, except for like as an adult this time, completely, right? No underwear, lying on the bed, and he asked me like what I wanted him to use, and it was a belt, a leather belt, and he did it, and it felt so good, and he kept going harder, and I was just like, yes, go harder, and it got to a point where it was like, okay, enough, like, I'm satiated, right? I'm satisfied, like, but he kept going. He kept going, and I was like, stop. He just kept going. And so that was a part that, like, that dynamic, that switch, in that moment, I think I fell deeper into submission, right? Because it was just like, the fact that he had the bravery, the courage to keep going, even though I told him to stop. The balls to keep going. Even though I told him to stop. A lot of men would stop, which on one hand, one can perceive it as, okay, that's a good thing. They're supposed to stop. They should stop, right? But then there's like a nuance to that, because another part, a bigger part, I would say, of me in that interaction is that no, I didn't want him to stop. Though it hurted, but I didn't want him to stop. So in that moment, in the interaction, it was basically building my pain tolerance, right? It was a test of building my pain tolerance. To the point where, yeah, he eventually did stop. Because I was like, all right, like I was screaming and it was just getting like way out of hand. So he stopped, and then we made love. But that was, yeah, it was such a release. It felt like so good. Obviously, there's a lot of things that's happening on a physiological level, psychological level too. Psychologically, it's just going deeper into submission. And the idea of feeling love, right? Connected back to what it felt like when my mom was giving me a beating. And that's my mom, right? So, you look at the understanding of, what a mom is, and what my mom was. In my mind, at that age, I felt that it was love, right? So it's just that reconnection to that ideology of what love is. In that moment, I felt very loved by my ex-partner. And he met that need for me by beating me. It wasn't to the point of bruises, though. That's the funny part about it. Like, when I got beat by him in that moment, right, that particular occasion, I don't remember having bruises. I always had bruises as a young child, so it's just amazing to see how, like, my mom fucking was able to put bruises on me and he couldn't. Not, at least not in that particular moment. But there were other times where it was against my will that he actually did put bruises on me. Unfortunately, and the law was involved, because it's a fine gray line between, when you give a person that power, because dominance and submission in that kind of interpersonal relationship is an exchange of power. And the lines can get very blurred where a person doesn't know, like, when to cut it off. You know, and BDSM crosses over many different spheres, right? It's not just in the context of a intimate relationship with your partner, but BDSM, I would like to say, is seen in corporations, right? At your job, you know, the dynamic you have with your supervisors is just like, yeah, you signed this agreement that you're going to work for them. Emphasis on for, right? Not with, but for this company. And you're going to complete certain duties, and you're held to certain expectations, creating this power dynamic that they are over you and you answer to them, right? And so giving them that degree of power over you, right? Being able to make decisions and give directions as to what your day is going to look like for 8 hours or more, right? The lines can get very blurred because it's like, okay, at what point is a boundary being drawn, right? At what point are you able to draw that boundary and to say, no, I'm not doing that, right? This is my life. You're asking me to do something that I don't agree with, right? Or that's outside of my scope of practice, or outside of my belief system, or outside of my value system, right? Some people continue to be compliant, right? There's a culture of compliance in workplaces, and they continue to do it. And some people be like, nah, right? So I'm saying that to say that it's seen, this dynamic of this exchange of power is seen in many different settings. And the question is like, okay, yeah, where does your self begin and end? You know, where does your sense of control begin and end? But in that relationship, I wouldn't say he had complete control, but he had a big percentage, a very big percentage of control over me that initially started out as mutual, you know, consent, right? But it slipped into non-mutual consent, and it was just like, what the fuck? What the fuck? The fuck is this? Like, this ain't my type of party right here, right? And this was like actually not even that far into the relationship where it kind of evolved, you know, into that. There's a transformation, and I realized, like, yo, this guy doesn't only feel like he owns me, but it's like he owns me, right? And he dictates like every aspect of my being. Like, I didn't really have much control, you know. I was in a master's program, like I said, at LIU. So I would go there, and he knew I was there, but then I would be required to check in. I had to come straight home. Granted, this was my regular routine anyway. Naturally, I'm just a kind of a homebody person, though I do like to go out. But, like, I know my home base, right? And I feel very comfortable in my home base. And like I said, we lived together since day one of our meeting. So it was just like, okay, go to school, come directly back home. And if I deviated from that, yeah, it would be consequences, right? And he was like, he was smart. I don't get involved with dumb motherfuckers. Like, that's not what I'm attracted to. So, and I think anyway, to dominate a woman successfully, in a way, you have to have a degree of wit and intelligence, you know. And that he did have. He was former military. But yeah, it got out of hand. It got out of hand where he was putting his hands on me, and it wasn't consensual. And I was just like, and it was, for him, it was out of anger too. A lot of times he would just get activated and like put his hands on me, yo. I'll share a few examples, and then I'm going to move on to my very last BDSM spanking that happened outside of that relationship, but when I moved back to New York. So I remember a time where I don't even know what the fuck happened. This is the thing about, like, when you're in a relationship and it's very intense, like, so much be happening, you're just like, what the fuck? I don't even know how this came to this point, but we were still in New York, in the Bronx, and out of nowhere, out of fucking nowhere, yo, like, he grabbed my hair, the back of my hair, and I just seen my hair, like, my dread, like, on the fucking floor, like, what the fuck? There was another time where out of nowhere, I can't remember, like, how the fuck it happened, how did I get to that point, but, like, I'm on the bed, and the fucking, I'm smuggled, I'm being smuggled, I couldn't breathe, you know, he's, like, literally choking me, has his hand over my mouth and my nose, I could not breathe, and I'm screaming, and I told that story before already, too, where the neighbor, I think, called NYPD, and they came, and they minimized the situation. It was a joke. It was sad, though, a sad joke, but it was a joke. How they, you know, responded to this incident of domestic violence, you know. But it was kind of scary, but part of me was excited by it. But then, like I said, it got to a point where it was like the beatings, I think, were not serving their purpose for which he wanted them to be served. So he would try other methods of controlling me, right? Like locking me outside of the apartment. And with that, I had to sleep in the subway station and sleep in the park. It was extreme. So that's kind of what pushed me actually to leave New York spontaneously, and I moved to LA. And I began my program, and I just focused on developing, you know, my career as a psychologist, which he despised, yo. That's why we had to part ways, because as I elevated, like, up the SES ladder, gaining this education and gaining this status, you know, this credibility, he got offended by it. Like, you know, it made him feel a certain kind of way. Just like that whole shit with KS and his notion about women with black women with PhDs. You know, it's just like, how can a black man who is self-respecting, right, and respects a black woman have an issue with her educating herself? You know, if anything, you should take pride in that, especially considering our historical context of racial oppression. But some men do have an issue with that, and those aren't really real men. Can't be. And those are men who think low of themselves, right? Who are already in low positions themselves, I think, as it relates to the SES totem pole. So that clearly wouldn't work. It didn't work. And yeah, I'm like, this shit ain't working. And I just built up my strength, which I think at some point every woman does when they're in a relationship that started off romantic and intimate and lovey-dub-dub or whatever, and it seemed like a perfect match, but it became toxic, you know, and then a woman kind of is wrestling with, like, oh my gosh, I love him, but I'm being mistreated. What should I do? Like, I'm not happy. The mistreatment is not going anywhere. It's a different story if, like, it's a mistake, right? Oops, made a mistake, and then they improve. But no, it's like, if it continues, it persists, it doesn't change, it actually gets worse, then yes, at some point a woman has to develop the courage, the willpower, the confidence, the faith in herself to put her foot down, to step out on faith, and to know that things will be okay, and you deserve better, and you can't tolerate this. You have to draw the line. But, you know, I take responsibility, you know, for my role in that, because yeah, a big part of me did like it, and in fact I loved it, but it got ugly to the point where it got ugly, like, nah, I don't like this shit. But like I said, there's still a big part of me, there's still a space in me, a big space in me that does crave that domination and just the touch of a man, an aggressive touch, but in a gentle aggressive way, right? Not like my life is in danger kind of way, but just like, you know, little manhandling me. So I experienced that actually when I moved back to New York. I was renting different Airbnbs across different neighborhoods. I was in like Williamsburg. I was in Bed-Stuy. I went to Jersey City in New Jersey, which is like a couple minutes outside of Lower Manhattan. And I was renting a house out there. It's a townhouse. And, you know, like I was saying, this tall guy worked at the hospital. Physically attractive. And just everything that I would look for in a man, except for, he has some weaknesses too, though. Which, for me, communication is really important. And if you can't, like, hold a conversation, that's a turn off for me. And I think that's a prerequisite. Like, that's how we guys out. Because, you know, you can learn a lot just from interaction and verbal interaction and conversation. It's not that so much that many men lack that. It's just that they withhold, because if they open up their mouth, they're going to fucking reveal too much about themselves, which they don't want to, right? So they are inhibited, you know, and they're guarded in that way. So for me, that's the easy way to weed them out. But he was kind of that way, but he knew how to, like, advocate and to assert himself for what he wanted. And that shit turned me on, yeah. So that spanking, it was like, okay, so it was like we met, we chilled, we talked. It's amazing to see how people can be very sophisticated in their interactions with other people, right? Like, you know, the fact that he was able to nurture, like, the baby girl in me. And there's a big baby girl in me that craves nurturing from a dominant man. I think the more I withhold myself from intimacy with the man, the bigger that baby girl grows. I try to silence her, right? It's like the more you try to silence something, the bigger it grows. So, yeah, like, he nurtured that part of me that craved that attention. And he was very sensitive, like, compassionate and soft. And then, like, I saw the switch, right? But it was just very, like, a smooth transition, seamless, where he went from, like, a daddy kind of demeanor to, like, a dominant, right? More like a master. And he delivered. He delivered, and he was just like, where do you want this spanking? And I was just like, damn. And I was like frozen. I just, like, shape shifted. And I'm like, and he decided for me where to give it. And this is for mature audiences only. As you guys know, all of my videos are for mature audiences only. And in fact, if you're watching this and you're my colleague, you shouldn't be honest. You should not be here, right? My videos aren't for you, right? But let's say you are my colleague professionally, and you've made it to this point in the video, then you're here for a reason. Like, what gets me is how, of course, like, we live in a society that says, okay, express yourself, be yourself, right? And we have these platforms, and then you do that, and then you got people within the field of mental health and psychology who want to come and cast judgment. Why the fuck are you here? You here because you take interest in me, first and foremost. Because if you didn't, what the fuck? No, I do not look for any of my coworkers or colleagues on these sites. I don't care if they have an Instagram. I don't care what their Facebook is. I don't care what they're saying on whatever platform, because honestly, I'm not really interested in them outside of the scope of the work that I do with them. I'm not. And that's how it should be. So I had to interject that here because I do get annoyed when people stalk my platform, my videos, my personal space. And not only that, but they overstep their boundaries. and try to control and dictate what I do with my personal life, as if it negatively impacts or infringes upon their life, right? But you came to my space. So I had to say that because I'm about to go ahead and get real funky in the next few minutes. So I like it that he just took initiative and he just ripped off my fucking panties, yo. He ripped off my clothes. He did it. That's even better than a woman doing it. I don't think men, y'all don't get that foreplay shit, yo. But that's actually part of foreplay. Like taking off a woman's clothes. Not just taking them off, but aggressively. Like ripping that shit off. Not like fucking to the point where you're hurting her, right? Like, so some of y'all, you don't know the fine line. You don't know the balance, right? But he did it, and I was like, damn. And given like his physique and his height, the size of his hands, everything is perfect, right? And just laid me across his fucking lap, and he delivered. And yo, the size of his hand was just perfect against my butt, firm, and that shit, like, it hurt, but it felt so good. It was just perfect. It was just fucking perfect, yo. And he kept going. Of like the time when I was with my ex-partner, who I had just mentioned earlier, with the belt, like, he kept going. Even though my body language communicated like, okay, this is enough, I've had enough, stop. This guy, when I was in Jersey City, he kept going, he kept smashing, and it went harder and harder, and like, you know, and I cried. Yeah, I was crying. Oh my gosh, such a fucking cathartic release. I cried, and he held me. So real dominant men get that shit, yo. So you got men that say, oh, I'm dominant, but like, it's a certain nuance to domination, yo. They just get it. Like, you don't have to explain it. If you gotta explain it, then this ain't for you, right? It's not a good match. Like, they just get it. They automatically know what to do, how to do it. Like, you know, and this is like not even really knowing me necessarily, right? But he's like, he knew me like from a different life. It's like we met before, you know. It's like he knew exactly what I needed in that moment, and held me and dried my tears and talked to me and just gave me that attention that I needed. If only. If only. If only it could be a space and time where two people can create such dynamic that exists in a healthy way forever. That's the missing piece. Yeah, that's the missing piece. On that note, I want you guys to share your comments below. Tell me what you guys think. I think that these men are rare, like, because men have been shaped into a different type of man, a lesser man, right? A more watered down, effeminate man that is very calculated, I would say, but almost too calculated, right? And too cautious, like overly cautious, and not trying to fall into the Me Too movement, right? The Me Too category. So that to me is a turnoff. I don't usually like those kind of men. I'm not drawn to those kind of men. Even if I was drawn to that man initially, like, that kind of behavior turns me off, right? Like, he has to ask me everything, you know, just questioning if it's okay. Can you do this? Can you do that? Like, that, I get it. It gives me, it puts the power back in my hands, which I think a lot of women in society want to feel empowered, right? In many different ways, in different areas of their life. And so it's the women's rights movement the Me Too movement, right? They want to take their power back. But for me, I don't need to feel empowered in that way. Like, I know my power, right? So I don't need to take away a man's power to feel empowered, right? I trust in situations like that where I feel like there's a degree of transparency and respect and honesty. Like, I trust that a man can make the right decisions with me, my body, right? Like, and if I set boundaries, then he can respect that. But a man, I feel like, doesn't have to micromanage asking every single time can he make certain moves as it relates to interacting with me in an intimate way. That takes out the organicness of it, right? So that's just my spiel on it. But yes, my body and my mind and everything about me has been craving that a spanking. And funny thing enough, like, the same guy from Jersey City, like, he actually reached out to me and I didn't reply. Because this is my thing. I'm about consistency, clarity. Why wouldn't I be? So, I think there's a lot of confusion when it comes in the dating process and inconsistency. That's a deal breaker for me, right? Like, just be consistent, If you say you want a relationship and you want to build and you want to be intimate, then do that, right? Like, let your actions align with your words, But there's so much incongruency between words and actions on the dating scene that I lose interest like that, at the drop of a dime. And I get taken out of it. I'm no longer like, if I was enthralled or encapsulated, head over heels, right, mesmerized, I'm no longer anymore because of your inconsistency. Men tend to be inconsistent. They're not, like, honest, and that speaks to his integrity. A man being able to keep his word, right, and show consistent interest. You ain't gotta be all over my fucking ass, but that can be a good thing too, especially if a woman is used to that level of attention, right? And, which I am. I'm used to that attention, right? I'm used to consistent attention, right? Constantly by a man. The same man, shall I say, right? Not talking about like different men, because that's not attractive. I'm talking about in dating, and you're getting to know a person, and you're dating a man. Like, if I'm dating a man, I'm with a man, like, I'm used to consistent attention, right? Like, me being on his mind. Not like it has to be obsessive, right? Because there's a healthy balance, but I'm saying, you guys get what I'm saying. Anyway, I'll catch you guys later. Share your comments below. Feel free to share this video with other people and to see what other people think about this. But yeah, like I said, it's not going to change. It's not like my craving, my desire to be spanked, to be dominated. That shit is not going anywhere. What did change, and I can see that what's still continuing to change is just me increasing my self-worth, right, and my self-concept just getting higher and higher and higher. If I was already at 100 and now I'm at 1,000, like, it's just magnifying even more. So it's definitely making my dating selection more narrow, more selective, which makes it difficult for men, I think, to even entertain me, or for me to entertain men. So I've come across a lot. I get inundated with a lot of messages on these dating apps, and it's all, hi beautiful, hey, oh, you're so fine, and it's just like they can't establish a true connection because they're so perceptive over how I look, right? And they comment on that, and it's good that, okay, you can give a compliment, but that doesn't do it for me. Like, giving me a compliment about my physical beauty does nothing to me. But saying something that communicates forward thinking, that you're thinking about a future, right? And building a structured relationship, like you're true, you're a man of your word, and you're really serious, communicating things along those lines, actually, yeah, and not just communicating, but like action, you know. Talk is one thing, but the actions definitely got to follow. So that's what moves me. And then we can begin to build. But yeah, it's just like, I think, like, part of me is like, damn, is it time? Is it time for another fucking spanking? Like I said, the guy, he reached out to me recently. He was like, oh, I want to see you. Nah, no, that shit don't work for me no more. Maybe many years ago, but that shit don't work. That I want to see you random text messages. It don't cut it. Doesn't. It's been raining all day, yo. What is really going on? I thought the rain was going to come on Sunday, but it's been raining all day today, so I can't even go out and run errands like I wanted to. I actually wanted to go to the store, get some water. I had to get some more Dr. Bronner's shower gel, some more rose water spray, some water, but it's raining. Hopefully I can find time to go out when it stops. But I'll catch you guys later. Thank you guys for tuning in. Shout out to all the real doms out there. The last few that are still standing. Catch you guys later.